all die. They ain't feeling sympathetic for the small guy. I don't think I'ma regret it when the cars fly. Ain't nothing really hitting like it used to. Gas wake the neighbors up like a rooster. It's a booster, help me see the future. I believe in karma and Karma Sutra, so let's do some.
I can't do it.
Okay.
We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Right.
Fucking thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Hello, everybody. So let me say hi to the chat. Hi, Nathan Ward. Hi, Tawny C. Hi, Mindhack. Hi, Meatball Good Meatball. Hi, Wes H. and Mamas and Papas and Misty Blue. Hello. And AZ and Soil Lodge. All right, awesome. So today we are going to, just look at some examples because there's new people here. What's up, Whack Beats? Let's roll. Yeah, there's some new people here, which is awesome, but obviously a lot of my process research, my research in general, I want to reiterate the point that this stuff is real. This stuff is real. And satanic panic is how you get away with ritual murder. So we're going to be looking at quite a few different examples. Today is going to be a little bit rough topic-wise, so I'm just giving everybody a heads up now. It's the only warning that you're going to get. So let's go.
See that 100 mil in the safe, no, I need that. See a smile on your face, yeah, I need that. No, I'm trying to get the cake that can take me to the place that'll make me feel safe. I don't need that. Tell me about the way you felt. I can tell you about the things that I said myself. I got a lot of demons sitting on my shelf. Wait a couple days, you can tell I need help now. Your falling face, first in the ground. Don't want change your path. Can you hear me laugh more? I can't change your path. Will you stay one last song?
Don't forget, we are literally out here fighting Demon Jaw. And hello, Stiff Meister Joker. And hello, Steve Sippos. No, it's not Satanic Saturday. And hi, Angie Power Disney, Martin Carson, Mizzy Jean, and Walter Wilder. Thank you so much. And Artemisia 2002 US. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. Hi, France Marks and Subsailor. Yeah, I had to bring back the OG, man. This is definitely the OG. And hey, Leah Janine Nichols. So nice to see you. And hello, Eddie, checking in from the Netherlands. Awesome. Misty Blue, that was the first Schizo Clip intro that I ever made. So it's actually, I redid some of the edits, but that was like my OG one. So yeah, doing a little bit of throwback. So in regards to this topic, because I found, and this is not going to be in a particular timeline, just so you guys know, that's not happening. I'm not here to give like a full history of satanic panic and, ritual murder. But when I was doing research, I found the most fascinating interview with this law enforcement official who gives a really grounded and fair perspective about the Geraldo Rivera series, and I I don't agree with everything that the guy says, but I think that he makes some very astute points. So I want to go ahead and start with one photo from Ed Sanders Archives, just for the people that are new here, so that you really know what my motivation is. Because obviously, yeah, my motivation's the truth, but also it's trying to figure out what the hell has happened over the past couple of decades, right? So this was from Ed Sanders Archives. Kenneth Anger's Hollywood Babylon, The Final Cut. So these photos, there was crime scene photos behind this. Apparently this was sent to Ed, and that's why it looks like that, because he taped it, on the folder. I couldn't bring myself to look at the other pictures, but I mean, this is stuff that, these people think that this stuff is funny, and it's not. It's absolutely not. But this is the article. So this is from the Arizona Daily Star, January 3rd, 1989. So Paul Lawton. So he keeps track of cults for the sheriff's office. Now, I'm not going to sit here and read this entire thing, but I think that this dude, first off, the handlebar mustache, big pimpin', right? He's a big pimpin' right there. And he's got the Necronomicon underneath his shoulder. Like, this dude goes hard. I'm sorry. I'm into this dude. I like him. He's got a good vibe. But right here. So let me see. All right. So hopefully you guys can see this. So he says, Lawton, he's referring to generational Satanists, meaning they have inherited their beliefs from their ancestors. Lawton said generational Satanists are extremely rare. Possibly only 1 or 2 such families live in Tucson and are extremely secretive. They are thought to have originated in medieval France from the Cathari tradition, he said, and went underground due to pressure from the Inquisition. Cathars believe that goodness exists only in the spiritual world of the good God, that the material world is evil and was created by an evil god called Satan. They can be lawyers, doctors, Air Force officers, anybody, Lawton said. Their ancestors believed in a form of Christian doctrine which held that Satan is a being who must be worshipped just like Christ. Hey, doesn't that sound like the process? Yeah? The generationalists spread their religion, he said, by completely perverting the minds of their children. Lawton said secrecy is vital to the practice of their religion because it includes the ritual sacrifice of human infants. Wow, I cannot read. Give me a second, please. Let me wet my whistle. So, I don't think he's really being extreme. I think he's being very balanced here. The victims are reared in secret within generational Satanist families, and thus their murders are extremely difficult for police to prove. These are not people who go snatching kids off the street, he said. Lawton recalled a case several years ago in which detectives received word from informants that several generational Satanists, here we go, were planning an infant sacrifice in Sedona. He said officers were told a woman would be bringing the baby from California and a cult priestess would be flying in from New York. Undercover detectives located the California woman and checked into the hotel room next to hers. He said the crying of a baby in the woman's room kept them awake all night. Officers also tailed the New York woman when she arrived. It was all checking out, Lawton recalled. However, word of the police surveillance apparently leaked out and the suspects scattered. By the time Department of Public Safety officers stopped the California woman on her return trip, there was no infant. The officers found she was carrying a child's doll, he said, adding that the woman was not inclined to explain, and investigators had no legal means to compel her to discuss what she was doing with it. She also denied ever having an infant, he said, and since officers had only heard a child in the next room, and because their informant's tips were legally nothing more than hearsay, no arrest resulted. He said generational Satanist families tend to know others of their kind, but they are not organized in any commonly understood sense of the term. They do not gather in large groups for religious meetings, nor do they see each other socially. There apparently is no intermingling of generational and post-counterculture Satanists, Lawton said. The generational Satanists would be as disturbed by heavy metal music as Christians, he observed. Lawton had nothing but criticism for Rivera's television special on devil worship in America. He said the program wrongly lumped Satanists with witches and participants in other occult or mystic rituals, a common mistake among members of the general public. The average witch presents about as much of a threat to society as the average Methodist. said Lawton, who is a Methodist. Whoop, there we go. I knew it was going to do it. Nope, there we go. Butterfingers activated. Occasionally, someone will be driving out by the Saguaro National Monument and see some naked people dancing around in the moonlight. They'll call me to report devil worshippers. In reality, such groups are witches, he said, adding that there are nearly as many denominations of witchcraft as there are Christian churches. And he sits here and gives a little brief history of witches. He says the Satanists should not be confused with mystical cults such as the OTO. Frank Jarvis Atwood, the condemned killer of 8-year-old Tucsonan Vicky Lynn Hoskinson, was a member of that group. He said the cult, popular among astrology buffs in Victorian England, was revived earlier in this century by Aleister Crowley. Blah, 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 blah. So, I think that that guy provides a pretty fair perspective on it. Like I said, I don't necessarily agree with everything, but, you know, I put it into the time, right? It's 1989. You know, they work with the information that they have at the time, right? And I think that I think he's fair. I think he's very fair. I think that his perspective about the generational Satanists is really interesting. And I don't know any generational Satanists, right? So I can't confirm or deny. I just think that it's interesting that he's not feeding into the fanfare, right? I don't think he's feeding into the fanfare at all. I think that he's being very grounded. Now, some of this other stuff that we're going to be looking at, let's just go ahead and get into, which one do I want to do first? Let's see. Because some of this stuff's going to get a little bit rough. It's going to get a little bit rough, but it is what it is. So let's go ahead and look. I'll save the cop stuff for last. Let's just get into some of the murders, right? So we are going to briefly discuss the murder of Karen Marsden. Karen Marsden and another woman were brutally murdered and sacrificed by a satanic cult. This is just a fact. And I was able to find a book in the Wayback Machine that had some photos, thankfully. We're not going to sit here and really read through it. I'm just going to show you guys a few articles. But this person was charged with ritual murder. These things are real. Just like people love to say that other religions, you know, kill in the name of their God, so do Satanists. They're not immune to that. They're not immune to pedophilia either, because we're going to be talking about some of that stuff too, especially with Satan fan Kenneth Lanning, right? So, right here. So this book, Mortal Remains. So right here, this is Karen Marsden. She was murdered very brutally. Carl Drew. Right here, Robin Murphy. Somebody put a cross on my head and it burned. And Andre Maltese, right? So, right here. And again, not going to go through all of the details of the crime. It's real rough, okay? But in Fall River, in regards to rumors of cult activities, there were stories of violent rituals, including persistent but unprovable rumors of mock crucifixions in the state forest, and the discovery of altar-like structures of wood and stone. There was evidence of the killing of cats and other animals and the ritualistic patterns of the stones at the murder site. There were the meetings in Fall River to conjure up the devil, and there were signs of stoning and ritual disfigurement on the bodies of Doreen Levesque, the other victim, and Karen Marsden. These were more than the esoterica of children playing at evil. They were tangible evidence of the devil itself. And they actually ended up getting a cult squad, which I thought was really interesting. But let's go back over here. So, right there. Life imprisonment and ritual murder, right? The alleged leader of a devil cult. Well, he was the leader. And like I said, Karen was a prostitute. However, he was basically running what some would say is very similar to Charles Manson and the family, because it was pimps and prostitutes. But they did not offer the information about the cult as quote unquote evidence, even though there is extensive transcripts and extensive articles detailing these things. Yeah. So the prosecution said that Karen was killed, mutilated, and beheaded by Drew and 2 others in a nighttime ritual. And that is correct. Over here, son of Satan, convicted of murder, right? They were ordered to slit her throat, and the satanic ritual on the victim was performed by carving an X into her chest while chanting in another language. There was only a skull fragment that was found. And on October 13th, 1979, the other victim, Doreen Levesque, she was also killed. The general gist of this story is that Karen knew too much and she was going to talk, about the death of Doreen. And so they said that she had to go, right? That's what they said anyway. But Waxler said the trial, with its references to murder, dismemberment, and devil worship, was a harrowing experience. Yeah, because this stuff is real. This stuff is absolutely real. See right there. She knew too much. Right there. So, for the people that want to say that these sort of crimes don't occur, they do. And that's not the only one. Obviously, I do see the Manson crimes as a ritual murder. That's what I see them as. I also see the Son of Sam as ritual. Even though it's random, I still think that they were playing a game. In my opinion, they were still involved in something. Because no, I don't think that David Berkowitz acted alone. I know that there are plenty of people who disagree with me, but we're not going to get into that today. Now, I want to get into a case that was in Florida, and some people actually may know of this case because it was a bit more popular. And this one, again, I would love to know why people like Dougie, Lucian, and other Satanists, because I'm not talking about like the Red Horn Devil, right? Like, that's not what I'm talking about. And yes, Charles Manson also did mock crucifixions. Yeah, he absolutely did. I'm not talking about that. I think that, I heard it on this old radio show where they were talking about the Ultimate Evil right after it had come out, and I thought that the statement was perfectly expressed. Was, Satan is the original lone nut, right? It's the excuse for people to act out these things, the evil that's within them. But it doesn't mean that it's not real and that these people don't believe in it and that it doesn't happen. And that's my problem. That's my problem, because I feel like this whole satanic panic crap is happening again. And I feel like Dougie and his friends are a real big part of it. But let's go ahead and let's take a look at this one from Florida, which is just a solid reminder of why I'm not there. But right here, teenager found guilty in satanic cult death. So this was in 1973. Excuse me. And it was the murder of Michael Cochran. So, right here. Interesting name for the cult, the Devil's Children. Not that far off from the children. But Cochran was tortured with repeated beatings with chains and cut by broken glass for more than 8 hours in a ceremony at the cult's Daytona Beach headquarters, an old house nicknamed the Roach Haven. Yeah, and right here, girl was priestess in torture slaying. So he was bound to a black wooden altar in the basement of the rooming house. And right here, another member of this cult was married to another member, because I think they ended up indicting and charging, I think, 6 or 7 people. So she was married to a third member, Nicholas Frizee of Dayton, Ohio, in a ritual that required them to have sexual relations before Hester, the cult leader, and a group of witnesses. This tracks. This tracks for me. From things that I've heard from former congregants of the Satanic Temple, this tracks for me. So, over here. Cochrane's death came about 18 months after Satan worshippers performed a series of black masses, cemetery desecrations, and animal sacrifices around Volusia County. Yeah. Cochrane's bound and mangled body was found in a wooded area about 15 miles from Daytona Beach. They must have hated this kid like hell because they really tortured him. That's the house that he was murdered in, and that is him. And that is the cult leader, David Hester. Yeah. So I don't really know what to tell people. I feel like people look at me like I'm stupid when I talk about these things. And they're like, that's not real. That doesn't happen. You're being a stupid conspiracy theorist. And I'm like, okay, tell me that you don't read without telling me. Now, I want to show you guys, no, this is not for Loco. No, this is how much I spoil myself. Literally, because they had it at the grocery store and I've never seen it, and I love sparkling water. I bought the plain Liquid Death sparkling water because I love sparkling water. And I saw it and I was like, what does it say? Murder your thirst. Okay. Whatever. I know that like Joe Rogan drinks it, but so does Theo Von, okay? And I love Theo Von, so I'm fine with that. But now I clipped a part of this article because it's really hard to read. So I'm going to show you guys the clip from this, and then I'm going to show you guys the main headline, okay? Because in relation to this case, and when I read this, I remember when I found this case, and I was just like, excuse my French, I was just like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? There was a Pentagon-funded school that was being investigated by the Senate, and Michael Cochrane is tied into all of this, right? So let's go ahead and let's look at a couple of these articles. Again, I want to show you guys the bit clearer part, and then we'll look at the others. So right here. Yeah, it's expensive. I'm not buying this stuff ever again. I'm going to make this 12-pack last for like a year at least. But so bizarre student abuse revealed. Green Valley calls Senate probe a rehash. So, whoops. Right here. Green Valley School has been a subject of controversy since a raid on the campus in February of '73 by a force of 50 law enforcement officials from the Volusia State Attorney Stephen Broyles' office and from the Daytona and Ormond Beach police departments. Broyles later dropped the criminal charges resulting from the incident, citing a lack of evidence. He then filed a civil petition to shut down Green Valley. During the nearly 10 months the suit was pending, a series of articles in Today pointed out a number of holes in Boyle's case and showed the petition could never be acted upon. The civil suit was also dropped. Adding to the controversy, Michael Cochrane, the Green Valley student whose statements formed the basis of the raid, was found tortured and murdered in April of 1973. Ken Francis, a member of a satanic cult in Daytona Beach, was convicted in Cochrane's murder. But Green Valley School never was closed, although it now operates with less than half the 90 students it had at the time of the raid. Attorneys for the school have filed suit against an Orlando television station for its broadcast of the raid. So, this school, it's rough. It's real rough. So, right here. Come on, don't do that. All right, so teenagers at a private Florida school were allegedly handcuffed together, struck by staff members, subjected to electroshock therapy by non-medical staff, indiscriminately given large doses of vitamins, and on occasions, injected with urine. 2 former staff members testified Tuesday before the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. Esther Snow of Daytona Beach, who worked for nearly a year as head nurse at Green Valley School in Orange City, Florida, told the committee that a boy who had lighter fluid injected into his arm was required as a punishment to dig a shallow grave and sleep in it overnight. He told me that while I was treating him, that he had to dig his grave with his good arm and then sleep on it, she said. Let me see. There was another nurse, Ruth McVeigh, who quit after Mrs. Snow was dismissed, said the children who ate too much candy, sniffed glue, or drank alcoholic beverages were injected with a vitamin D substance. Their insides actually burned, their skins flushed red as a beet. 2 former Green Valley School employees also told the committee that buildings at the school were squalid and infested with roaches and other insects, that the same medical treatment was given to the children regardless of their mental problems, and that sexual promiscuity among students and school staff was commonplace. Yeah. And down here, yeah, they did make them sleep in a shallow grave. Investigator John Walsh of the subcommittee staff produced a statement and a detailed chronology alleging that one student committed suicide with a gun that von Hilsheimer had permitted him to buy, and that another ex-student was beaten to death by members of a satanic cult led by a student still in the school. Yeah. Isn't that lovely? So that is Esther Snow, and this basically says a lot of the same things. But right here, a Pentagon-funded Florida school for disturbed youngsters, right? So I'm not going to sit here and read all of that again, but that was what, and honestly, I think that these things are still going on, but it's what your government's doing. Right? There's a satanic cult in a Pentagon-funded school, and people are being murdered after giving statements. I mean, that's a government document, right? That's not satanic panic, right? But these things are used, in my personal opinion, to feed into the whole satanic panic thing. Yeah, that is just my personal opinion. Let's go ahead and look at one more thing, and then I'm going to look in the chat, and then we're just going to keep on going because I've got some stuff from Ed's files to show you guys too. All right, let's look at one more because Florida, what a hellscape, right? What a hellscape. I'm glad I'm not there anymore. So, discovery of shackles sets off the hunt for cultists. They were found by children playing in northwestern Pasco County. Yeah. Not going to sit here and read this whole thing, but this was the Tampa Bay Times, October 19th, 1973. Not that far from Daytona, right? Not that far from Daytona. How would you feel if your kids found that stuff while they were playing at a park? That's a collar right there. I mean, obviously these shackles, depending on the size of the person, but that's very clearly a collar, right? So I don't really know what to tell people. Satanic panic is fake and gay. Fake and gay. I do not endorse any of that here whatsoever. Nope. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. Sorry. So let me go back in the chat. I'm not going back all the way. Sorry, guys. Let me see. Hello, Boost Laden. Hi, Corn Freak. And Loot Fist Limeade. In my opinion, it's no coincidence that the new improved Satanic Panic propaganda campaign is rolling out with the Diddy indictments. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, the stuff with Diddy of just like, what do people think is going to happen? What do you actually think is going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. They're going to kill him. They're going to kill him in jail. They're going to kill him in jail. They're going to do the same thing they did with Epstein. It is what it is. Like, people think that something different's going to happen, and it's just not. History provides great examples, and we can learn so much from it. People still ask about the stupid client list and about the, who went to Epstein's island. Shut up. The FBI has the tapes. Quit asking stupid questions. There is such a thing as a stupid question, and the stupid question is the Epstein client list. We want the tapes. It's going to be the same thing with Diddy, man, But yeah, I mean, the Satanic Panic stuff has been ramping up. In my opinion, I notice it too. Some people do, some people don't, because, you know, eventually I want to come on and talk about, because I don't even know how I got into the rabbit hole, and I'm not going to digress too much, but JJ Brine, right? And the Vector Gallery, which I believe Desert Rain was the first person to bring that up. And I talked about it on, well, Operation Garbage Can Dude talked about it on the Occult Rejects. We were on there talking about the process. And I didn't realize that I had forgotten about it. But, you know, that wasn't that long ago. And he died mysteriously in Gainesville, right? And he was pretty young. But I mean, that was a total process Manson cult. Tied to Kissinger? Okay, there's way too many ties to Kissinger here, guys. I can't deal with it. Let me see. Satan can suck a mean phallus. I love that username. A priest was killed in my state of Wisconsin in the early 80s, maybe a part of the string of priest killing. Walter Wilder, I have not heard of a string of priests being killed. That's unfortunate and very interesting. Let me see. And AZ, you've heard of these? Okay, so some people have, so I'm glad. I thought you were drinking again. Was a bit afraid for you. Must be under lots of... No, mind tag. No, I'm not boozing. No boozing. Nah, I'm good. If I started drinking again, I would probably... You guys would see me on the roof of a Walgreens, like a helicopter aerial view, and it would be the 6 o'clock news, and I would be up there like... I hate everybody. Everything is fake and gay. That's... No, I'm not gonna booze it. Gang, gang. Liquid Death had an actual witch and occultist perform binding rituals to their cases of water. What? No, they didn't. In and out. Are you serious? I will look it up. Come on. No. I think I paid like $9 for that case of 12, and I'm like, this is the most expensive water I've ever bought. That's absolutely terrible. Let me see. And still fallen for words. Hello. Being a former heroin addict, I've injected a lot of things. Urine was definitely not one of them. Yeah, I don't really know how you get to urine. I understand the... Don't understand. I'm just aware of the ingestion of various bodily fluids in certain rituals. I don't understand the whole injecting it, though. You know what I mean? Hello, someone, and hello, Jay Snyder. And... hello, Margaret Walter. And she had a Nurse Ratchet thing going on. I mean, she might have. I mean, I don't really know. She very well could have. Epstein 2.0. John Carr was a big urine fan. Yeah. Oh, we're going to be talking about the cars. We're going to be talking about the cars and the Son of Sam and all that stuff. Because I'm not going to digress here too much on it. But those tapes that are on the People versus David Berkowitz website, I'm recording and slowing down and speeding up and all that stuff. Those tapes have been edited heavily. But I'm going to be able to prove it to you guys. Yeah. Because then we need to ask the question of why and who was given those tapes. Because they didn't come from FOIA. Nah, don't believe that. Don't believe that whatsoever. Why would they release those tapes but not anything about John Carr's death, right? Because there's already 2 FOIAs out about John Carr's death. So we're going to be coming back and talking about that. But whatever, the gardener decided to make like a fake temporary reappearance on Twitter, which I told you guys, predictable, right? The clown show is always predictable. So we'll be bringing him out of his little retirement here soon. You know what I mean? Let me see. The detective Rothstein said the process may have been involved in the Wisconsin priest killing Walter Wilder. Really? That's very, very, very interesting to me. I have not heard that before. I'm just racking that up in my brain because I'm going back to Rothstein and Maury and all of that stuff. That's where I'm going to be refocusing to. So I would like to look into that because that's fascinating. Hello, Kumori. And finding out about JJ Brine's friendship with Amanda Bynes has me noited. Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, Amanda Bynes and him walking around like this. I'm like, oh, she's a processian. Okay, that tracks. That tracks, right? That totally tracks for me. But I'm not ready to talk about the JJ Brine stuff because the pictures alone, I was like, this was a thing. I can't believe that that was a thing. And the stuff that's like going on with the exploding pagers, and that location was something that JJ Brine had a lot of events at his gallery about. I'm just like, was the process over there, stirring up a little bit of trouble back then, not that long ago, but still back then a little bit. But let's go ahead and let's continue because I could sit here and digress all day, and that's really not what I'm trying to do. So we're just going to kind of move through a couple. I included one article about the process for the folks that are new because I understand my library is very long, right? Sorry, not sorry. But just one that way you can see. Not going to get into it too much. And I also want to show you guys what was going on in the UK at the time. Again, not really going to get into it too much, but to see that this wasn't just a panic in the States, right? Because, in my opinion, all of this stuff started with Manson. I think that Manson was the beginning of the Satanic Panic. I think it was the pregame. I think that the Son of Sam was when they stepped their foot on the gas with the propaganda and increased their strategy of tension, so to speak, because I do think that the Son of Sam is a perfect example of the strategy of tension because what was the result? Yay, more cops, and all the cops are getting raises, right? And the public is absolutely terrified, and that's how that's supposed to go, right? These things are not organic, in my opinion, despite what the Gardner is, the Gardner doth protest, right? So this is actually a crime that I learned about from Ed Sanders. So this occurred in New Jersey, I believe. So 1971, youth held without bail in Satan cult killing. Victim sought his own death. So this one I had not heard of before whatsoever, but when I went to Ed's archives, I was like, oh, damn, like that's crazy to me. But yeah, there was a lot of this going on at the time. There was a lot of this going on. So let me see if we can find exactly where it was. The youths tied Newell's hands and feet behind him with adhesive tape, then watched while the victim went through an apparent Satan ritual. Williams said that Newell then asked them as friends to proceed with the killing. He said that Newell was pushed into the pond and that he and Swikert waited until bubbles appeared, then drove back to Vineland to pick up friends and headed for Florida. They said the victim had taken out a $4,000 insurance policy recently, which named Williams and Swikert as beneficiary. He also indicated that the possibility of drug use was being investigated in connection with Newell's death. They did not want to discuss the satanic cult angle. And for whatever reason, because also he had slashed wrist, they wanted to call it a suicide with assistance. That's a real bold claim there, guys. That is a really bold claim. But these are kids, right? These are kids. Look at how young they are. I mean, they're freaking babies. To me, they're babies because I'm old. But it's like, come on, man. Whatever. Anyways, so right here. Boy, 9, murdered in a Florida sacrifice. Yep, 9 years old. A 9-year-old boy was slain last night in what police called a ritualistic murder, like sacrificing a lamb. A former mental patient, his clothes soaked with blood, was arrested at the Miami International Airport about 20 minutes after the killing. I'm not going to sit here and really get into this because that makes me very sad. However, because this is something that I think is a fair observation that I'm not going to discuss. So this individual who was the quote unquote mental patient had a scribbled, disjointed, poorly spelled message So the God of Israel say so. The gods say the temples must not be used for any violence nor any police office. Child offer has sacrifices. I understand that the concept of ritual murder dates back since time immemorial. I understand that. I'm just talking about these things factually. Now, over here, 1975, this was in Australia. The naked body of a girl found washed ashore on the resort coast of the state of Victoria Monday may have been the victim of a witchcraft sacrificial killing. Although results of the autopsy were not completed, police said it was unlikely she drowned. Police said the girl's left arm had been cut off and that in the fork of a tree 15 miles from where the body was discovered, a school teacher found a 14-inch clay figure of a nude woman with the left arm missing. Police said it could have been the spot where the girl entered the water. And right there is the doll. Yep, so that's nice. And over here, this is in regards to the crime that we just talked about, talking about the murder in Florida, drugs, sex ceremonies, mystic orgies. Yeah, sacrificing cats, goats. Okay. Women being raped. Oh, and right over here. Girl named in murder, not 17, but 12. But 12. Right? A girl arrested and charged along with two young men in the shooting death of a San Antonio woman near Fredericksburg was found to be a 12-year-old child. Meanwhile, the death of Mrs. Newsom was officially termed a murder Sunday by Dr. Sam Corman, Assistant Bexar County Medical Examiner. His report said that Mrs. Newsom had suffered massive wounds about the chest and neck. Her body was found Friday on a lonely ranch road about 12 miles southwest of Fredericksburg. Gillespie County law enforcement officers said they may have linked the murder to a hippie cult Church of Satan. 12 years old. 12 years old. Yeah? 12. And this, because again, these crimes still, yeah, oh, Jay Snyder, that dude's confession letter, yeah, it reminded me of the bomber's letter too. Yep. Reminded me of that too. I agree. I think yeah, I'm not going to get into whether that dude was guilty or not. I'm going to stop sharing that for just a second. What are the chances that everyone, not everyone, I shouldn't say that. Told myself I was going to stop speaking in generalities. What are the chances that decades later, a satanic crime, a crazy person, that they're going to have disjointed language almost identical, right? Almost identical. Not completely, but almost. Because the temple bomber, Sean Patrick Palmer, right? It was, Elohim must kill. Like, it doesn't really make any sense. People can be mentally ill and be very intelligent. Right? I'm just saying. It doesn't really track for me. That's all I'm saying. But this article is talking about the home that Cochran was murdered in, right? And, some people don't care. Some people do. That's fine. However, I just think it's interesting to follow these through the newspapers and see how people are reacting. See if they change the story. That's really what I'm looking for, is if they're changing the story, right? But they don't. They don't. Right here. Says the walls once echoed with the screams of Ross Michael Cochran, a 17-year-old with a history of emotional disturbance, as he was tortured by a broken wine bottle slashed across his face and needles thrust up his fingernails and into his throat. He was beaten by as many as 24 people as he was held captive, tied up for about 6 hours, first in an upstairs apartment and then in a basement room where members of the Satanic cult had an altar for their rituals. After being tortured during the day, Cochran was driven to the wooded area near New Smyrna Beach and beaten to death with a pine log. Police investigating Cochran's death discovered the altar room, which had chains and ropes strung across the walls and was decorated with symbols of Satan worship. Teenagers. Teenagers, right? So, Over here, this one on the left, weird religious rites reported in La Honda. I thought that this one was just kind of interesting. Okay, this is from March 13th, 1975. Like I said, I don't have a specific timeline here, but the idea of the ritualistic abuse and or sacrifice of animals, this is also often chalked up to conspiracy theory and satanic panic. I'm not going to bring it up today, but in my Kenneth Lanning episode, I show what a crock of shit that is, excuse my French, where they offer no proof whatsoever to refute these claims. But geese, dogs, and a goat were decapitated, their heads were cut cleanly away. Some people think that they were used in black mass rites. Why? Because they were missing all of their blood. Yeah, they were missing all of their blood. Obviously, that's kind of weird, right? That's kind of weird. Now, this one here in the middle, the Church of the Final Judgment, Black Magic Links Probe. Yep, that's the process. Not getting into it, just included it here. But in regards to people who know who Creech is, Thomas Eugene Creech, Confess Thursday, October 17th, so 1975, so it would be October 16th, to 42 killings after taking the stand in his first-degree murder trial. Authorities have said they doubt that all of Creech's claims are true, although they have found the bodies of at least 2 men Creech says he killed. If Creech is telling the truth about all 42 slayings, he would be the largest known mass murderer in the history of the U.S. Creech, 25, also testified Thursday that he knew of human sacrifices by satanic cults. Who does that sound like? Who does that sound like? Henry Lee Lucas, right? That sounds like Henry Lee Lucas. It's not just one person. Because Henry Lee Lucas got on the good side of the cops to totally clean up the books, right? Cops are still out here cleaning up the books. And somebody had brought up Diddy. So I will point this out because I'm not talking about Diddy. However, because obviously I have the NYPD, particularly Yonkers PD on my mind, right? But allegedly, in one of the New York police departments, they have a photo of P. Diddy hanging up. Yeah. Allegedly. So I'm not, again, really blowing any minds about the stellar or not reputation of the New York brass, right? I certainly don't think that I am. Just as a follow-up to people, I will be reaching out to Codella tomorrow. I'm going to reach out to him once. If he answers, great. And if he doesn't, oh, well, it is what it is. I'm not going to sit there and beat a dead horse with the guy. If he's interested, cool. And if he's not, that's fine. I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. But let's go ahead and see what they got going on in the UK. Because it's not just crazy Americans, right? It's not just crazy Americans. So this is obviously some of this dating back, right? Obviously. Because, yeah, this all predates Manson, the process. But look, California to Britain to Russia, 13 countries. That's what they're talking about, 13 countries. But over here, this is the one for me that drives it home. Old cult of black magic, but a cover for obscene practices. Yes, do you see the point of the statement that Satan is the first lone nut, the lone gunman, right? And over here, 20 years later, 1974, Black Magic Links probed, right? Now these were particularly just damaging churches, church property, things of that nature. But if they can't prove it, as Lawton said in the beginning, right? If police can't prove it, and now, thanks to people like Doug, they get to claim religious persecution, even though they're non-theistic libertarians. Ugh. What do you think is going to be the result of that? Because I saw a really fascinating post from somebody that I follow on Twitter where they were saying, I can't remember what university it is that they're by, but they said that there were obviously, a lot of pro-Palestine protests, right? Not here to talk about that with you guys whatsoever, but a lot of protests, a lot of struggles going on campuses all over the country right now, all over the world right now. That there were a lot of Manson-esque dudes on campus and that things were getting a little hairy. Yeah, things were getting a little hairy. That tracks. Why does that track? Well, I want to show you guys. I hope that I grabbed it and I don't know that I did. Fudge, I didn't. All right, never mind. Well, that's embarrassing. I'll show it next time. I have Ed's file. It's just a memorandum from the FBI about COINTELPRO in regards to the alleged fear of the uprising of Black militants and Black extremists. MLK was obviously on that list, among other extremists, right? Any sort of political dissidents. They got to go. That's what's going on right now. That is what's going on right now. And so that's why I think it's important to put these things into historical perspective, because while I will have the conversation with a Satanist, if they would have a logical and level-headed conversation with me about some fake claims, because just like everything else, there's fake claims, right? I'm not saying that every single thing is true. But the things that are provably true, they never mention it. Never. I have listened to hours and hours and hours of Doug talking. He never, ever, ever mentions any of this stuff. Ever. He also doesn't talk about Michael Aquino, but you guys know that I could really beat a dead horse with that one, no pun intended, because we're about to talk about animal torture and sacrifice. So here we go. Let me get this pulled up and away we go. Here we go. Sorry, I saw that my Wi-Fi was getting weird. So June 20th, 1973, animal torture. Satanist right? Important questions to consider. Yeah? Because technically it is. But this woman, which we're going to see in another slide, the eyeballs of 7 dogs had been slashed with razor blades and crosses were cut into the animals' scalps directly above the eyes. The brains of many of the cats had been pierced with needles. And the woman referred to herself as a witch. She had 7 starving horses that had been cut with razor blades or knives. They had punctures and slashes in their lips and nostrils, and one horse had a 4-inch long gash in his throat. 61 animals. And used gas masks to go in there. And here. A lot of people like to argue, and I don't do the alien stuff, right? But the cattle mutilations that, like, it's aliens or it's definitely not Satanist. That's the whole point of this, is it's definitely not Satanist. It is not a cult. Right? We talked about that with the Kenneth Lanning stuff. But right here, a cow found dead with its left eye, ear, udder, and sex organs removed. No other meat was taken from the carcass. A second case involved a calf which had been apparently shot to death. Oh, I didn't know that a coyote could shoot a calf. I mean, what is this, Bugs Bunny? This is a joke. This is a freaking joke. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the Franklin scandal, Senator John DeCamp, a sus lord in his own right, but gosh darn it, I kind of like the guy, right? But apparently DeCamp was looking into cattle mutilations and was, trying to have a larger probe conducted by the government, which I'm just like, damn, man. I mean, he does address that some people thought that maybe it was aliens, right? Well, stuff flying out in the sky, right? Because I don't know in 1974 how quote unquote normal that was as far as calling it aliens or UFOs, but you got to give the guy daps where it's due. So, right here, this is the House of Torture, right? The House of Torture. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to read every single thing. But what did she say? Miss Oberly told the police that the Satan cut blinds them, but at night, the animals, that's what they're talking about, right? We just read that in the other article. At night, they see Satan. It's some kind of ritual that she has. Okay. All right. Whatever you say. And again, right here, the eyeballs slit with a razor, puncture wounds in the brain. She had turtles for whatever reason. I don't really know what that accomplishes. And there are some of the dogs. Yeah. So isn't that lovely? I don't really know what to tell people. It is what it is. These things, these rumors cannot follow groups throughout history. And I'm talking about any group. Whatever group comes to your mind, if it gets you up in your feelings, I don't really care. These rumors cannot follow groups throughout history and there just be nothing to substantiate it. I'm sorry. That's just not how reality works. Those rumors are there for a reason, right? Yeah? Okay. So, I want to show you guys this book that I found. It's a little bit rough, but when I get to not necessarily exonerate, because Dave McGowan doesn't need exoneration, but when I get to validate my boy McGowan, may he rest in peace, I love that. I love that. I found this author. I think he's really interesting. His name is Philip Jenkins. A lot of his stuff has been wiped from the internet, unfortunately. And again, we're not going to sit here and read every single thing. But in regards to the satanic panic and the big claim from Satanists, Processians, whoever, that satanic ritual abuse or ritual abuse, things of this nature, that this is absolutely not real because for whatever reason, they expect you to believe that they're the only ones that don't have pedophiles in their group. Yeah. Okay. You believe that? All right. That's fine. This author originally had a very strong position of the moral panic. And then as he continued investigating over time, that changed. And I respect his honesty. And I like that you could see the differences in his work. So we're going to go ahead and take a peek. This is rough, but it is what it is. Because what is the relevance of this? Well, it's Kenneth Lanning, because Kenneth Lanning says that snuff isn't real, that satanic ritual abuse isn't real, that cults aren't a problem. So the book is called Beyond Tolerance, Child Pornography on the Internet. In 1998, he published the book Moral Panic, which was a history of ideas of child abuse and molestation over the past century or so. And as a part of this, I described the then recent controversy over the various dangers that children encountered on the internet. Calls for government action against online obscenity and cyberporn resulted in the controversial Communications Decency Act, or CDA, of 1995, a sweeping censorship measure that was eventually struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. As a follow-up to my study, I became interested in the whole area of internet pornography, which was surrounded by so many myths and misstatements, and this led me to imagine a book on internet-related moral panics. Initially, I had no intention of dealing with the child pornography issue, but quite early on, I was startled to find materials of this sort as well as indications that a substantial traffic existed. And right here. The reason I was so surprised is that hitherto I had thought that allegations concerning child pornography on the web were largely bogus. My attitude was conditioned by my knowledge of general anti-porn rhetoric, which tries to stigmatize normal, consensual adult materials by contextualizing them together with the most unacceptable content, namely child pornography, extreme sadomasochistic portrayals, and even so-called snuff films. To win the widest possible support for repressive measures, activists assert that obscenity is not merely a consensual crime, but involves harm to those unable to give consent. Any suggestion that this is victimless activity must be countered by examples of actual and severe harm. On both counts, child pornography is an excellent rhetorical weapon. Hence, the far-reaching claims since when? Since when? The 1970s. What was rumored to be found in Roman Polanski's little attic, right? Snuff films and child pornography. About the supposed scale of this activity. What else happened? John Wayne Gacy, John Norman, right? Dean Corll. So, obviously, this is continuing. I'm just showing you guys what I have because I'm not going to sit here and deal with all of this. But he is pointing out the problems with activists on both sides. Because I agree. There's the activists they may mean well, but then things get corrupted, right? These things get corrupted. I just thought that his statement here was very interesting. Having spent a decade arguing that various social menaces were vastly overblown, that serial killers and molesters did not lurk behind every tree, nor pedophile priests in every rectory, I now found myself in the disconcerting position of seeking to raise public concern about a quite authentic problem that has been neglected. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I respect this author's honesty. But right here, because obviously I was looking up Kenneth Lanning to see if I could find anything interesting in the Wayback Machine with his real hot takes about snuff, even though Alan Dershowitz literally promoted it. But here he is talking about NAMBLA, FBI agent Kenneth Lanning, a specialist in child abuse investigations. Yeah, that's one word for it. Remarked at this time, like advertisements in swinger magazines, pedophiles use electronic bulletin boards to find each other. Yeah, they do. They do. Kenneth Lanning, they do. But his whole take about how, snuff's not real, well, this author would disagree. To give an idea of the content of some of these tales that he found on one extreme content site in 2000. Yeah? 14-year-old Avenger. Pedo, bisex, scat, WS, vomit, animal torture, spanking, snuff, incest, a hunt by blank, rape, torture, cannibalism, snuff. Amanda the Slut episode 1. Preteen and CSM suggested snuff. And by Kinnick, rape, pedo, torture, snuff. Baby in the arcade. Baby sex is best. Yeah? I'm not going to say these other words because this is all completely disgusting. And I can't deal with that. I can't deal with any of that. And, well, we'll just go ahead and skip past that because I want to get to the Attorney General's Commission on Pornography. This is over 1,000 pages long, so I am absolutely not going to read it. Kenneth Lanning is cited in this. However, this is victim testimony because Kenneth Lanning is the best thing that ever happened to the devil, in my opinion. But right here, this victim herself, talking about crimes against women and against children, she said, we see pornography having introduced a profit motive into rape. We see that filmed rapes are protected speech. We see the centrality of pornography and serial murders. There are snuff films. We see boys imitating pornography. We see the average age of rapists going down. We're beginning to see gang rapes in elementary schools committed by elementary school age boys imitating pornography. We see sexual assault after death, where frequently the pornography is the motive for the murder, because the man believes that he will get a particular kind of sexual pleasure having sex with a woman after she is dead. We see a major trait in women. We see the torture of women as a form of entertainment. And we see women also suffering the injury of objectification. That is to say, we are dehumanized. We are treated as if we are subhuman. And that is a precondition for violence against us. And we'll just end right here. When your rape is entertainment, your worthlessness is absolute. You have reached the nadir of social worthlessness. The civil impact of pornography on women is staggering. It keeps us socially silent. It keeps us socially compliant. It keeps us afraid in neighborhoods and creates a vast hopelessness for women and a vast despair. Now, I get that a lot of people already think that I'm a prude, and that's fine. And they may think that these topics are unrelated. If that is the case, then I will say go look up who Kenneth Lanning is. Okay? Go look up who Kenneth Lanning is. Because Kenneth Lanning of the FBI, formerly, in my personal opinion, is the reason why these things are a problem. People can do what they want to do. I have my personal opinions about certain things. However, the idea that the profit motive, as that victim stated, does not cross over with these things. And man, isn't it just like really weird that that was 1969, 30, 50, over 50 years after the Manson crimes, there's still rumors about snuff and child pornography being found in that house. Yeah. And we know what a just nasty person that Roman Polanski was, right? It's because the government literally does not care, and I told you guys last time, is run by serial killers and pedophiles. Now, whether they're satanic or not, it's to be determined. It's to be determined. Now, I want to show you guys one more thing before I show you stuff from Ed's files, because I know that my Wi-Fi is being fake and gay. I was messing with it all day. All day. I'm not even kidding. I unplugged and plugged back in, and yes, turned it on and off so many times. I give up. I feel like the internet just hates me. But I'm just going to show you guys a little bit because I want to find an audio clip that I think would be appropriate the next time that I discuss this in regards to ritual murder and whether you want to call it black magic, witchcraft, Satanism, whatever. If you are not familiar with subliminal jihad, Dimitri did an amazing series about Liberia and its great misfortunes, especially in relation to the American Empire. But in discussing the various coups that happened thanks to our puppets that we propped up down there, he went into a lot of detail about the witchcraft that they were involved in and the human sacrifice. And I can't even put into words like the effort that he put into that. It's one of the best podcast series that I've ever listened to in my entire life. I highly recommend listening to it with headphones on. He has audio testimony in there. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. However, I found a really interesting book. And this entire book is about the promise of terror and elections in Liberia. thanks to us. However, I just want to show you guys a little bit because they talk about how they use victims of human ritual sacrifice as medicine for these soldiers, for these militants, for these extremists, things of that nature. So right here. While on a trip to Monrovia during this period of 1983, I found taxi drivers unwilling to deliver me to any areas off the main roads after dark. They expressly warned me about heartmen, and one even told me he was considering carrying a gun for protection. Well before that summer, when I first arrived in Liberia in the fall of '82, I had been cautioned by new friends in Monrovia about my intentions to conduct research in Cape Palmas. Maryland County was a hotbed of witchcraft and ritual killers. I was warned, those people down there are strongo. Fresh in their minds was the notorious case of Moses Tway, found dead on the beach in Harper on July 4th, 1977, with his eyes, ears, nose, tongue. Oh, well, shoot. Is that the wrong page? Yep, it cut off. Sorry, guys. I'm a dummy. Anyways, down here, I can't help the Wayback Machine. Don't judge me. I grab the pages that it'll give me. Sorry. But over here, again, talking about the association of ritual murder and electoral politics in Liberia. I'm not here to get into a big history study about this. I just know that a lot of people that I've talked to haven't heard of this. And down here, talking about the murdered children, witchcraft. This was commonplace at this time. And the way that Dimitri of Subliminal Jihad breaks it down, it's basically like you're in a horror movie when you listen to it. The beginning is a little bit slow. It's a bit of a slow burn, but he's very thorough and he does a really good job. I cannot recommend it enough. That shows, in my opinion, and my intention was to show Ed's memo from the FBI about COINTELPRO. That was my intention, was to kind of show you guys. It's not just there. It's here too, right? These things serve a greater purpose. It's not just domestic gladio, American gladio, strategy of tension. It serves very many purposes. But I think that if you would like a really raw, visceral example, I would listen to Subliminal Jihad, Demon Forces, the history of the great Liberian misfortune. I cannot recommend it enough. I really can't. But let me see. Give me... I don't even know what number I want to choose. Somebody tell me how bad my Wi-Fi is. If the audio is not cutting out, I'm going to keep going. Because I want to show you guys this stuff from Ed's files. I don't care if the visuals cut out. That's fine. Yeah, Liberia got totally screwed. Most countries do, you know. It's not just the American Empire, though a lot of it is the British Empire, Toddy, but I know that you know that. We know that, right? Like I said, I'm certainly not a LaRoucheite whatsoever, but his whole conspiracy theory about the British plot to destroy America, yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's the Vatican too. The audio's fine. Beautiful. All right, so then we're going to rock and roll because I don't care how many times my big ass head gets frozen on the screen. Let's fucking go. The video's choppy. That's cool. It's fine. My face doesn't matter. Here we go. So, Process Toronto, 1971. Bada boom, bada bang. So, obviously, this is Larry Larson, right? So, because we're coming back to Canada soon, guys. I haven't forgotten about the court records, none of that. But Bob McDonald of the Toronto Sun called. His phone number is blank. McDonald has been writing a series of articles about the process. The process applied for and received a grant in aid from the Canadian government for around $26,000. Parliament heard about it, and some members denounced the grant to Satanists. Process is using the old deny, deny, deny routine. Ah, yes, as they do. They still do. He said that the process is also working as volunteers in a mental hospital. I would love to know which one. He said the Process Public House in Toronto at 99 Gloucester had been, prior to and during Process occupation of it, the house of members of a cult that had been involved in the death of a girl in 1967 as a result, according to MacDonald, of the cult beating the girl to exorcise the devil from her. I've looked this up. This is true, and it's very tragic. Here's what he said about this cult. The cult operated within the Anglican Church in Toronto, using as home St. Matthias Church and perhaps the church rectory. They were able to operate at St. Matthias up until early 1967 when the girl died. There were two known Church of England ministers involved in the cult, one of whom was thrown out of the Church of England. They are Reverend Canonmore Smith. He was not thrown out, but evidently has moved from Toronto. MacDonald cannot get a current address for him. And Reverend Douglas Tisdall, who was thrown out of the Church of England after the cult was exposed. The head of this cult at St. Matthias was a woman referred to as Mother. Her name is Marjorie Rogers, aka Mary Rogers. She had about 50 followers, according to MacDonald. Sometime in early 1967, a young girl died after being beaten by the cult to remove the devil from her. The official cause of death was listed as brain fever. The cult insisted that they had nothing to do with the girl's death, and no one was ever arrested. The group was, however, ousted from Anglican church facilities. In March 1967, the group moved to a 3-story frame house at 99 Gloucester Street in Toronto. Douglas Tisdall and Mary Rogers, the head of the cult, were among those who moved to the Gloucester address. The Process moved to Toronto officially, evidently, sometime around the summer or fall of 1970. It will be noted that Artie Aarons, the Process landlord in LA, stated that Process members talked to him about going to Toronto as early as spring of 1968. Yeah? That tracks for me, and I love having additional corroborating statements. Love that. It really slaps. The Process moved to 99 Gloucester Street, the residence of the anti-devil cult. The Process house at 99 Gloucester was purchased in March of 1971 by a human, I don't know why he words it that way, named Klaus Schwarzkopf, or Schwarzkopf. Schwarzkopf is Assistant Dean of Business Administration at Mount Seneca College. MacDonald said that several new Process members had been recruited from Seneca College, evidently including one of Father Malachi's henchmen, one Father Phineas. Who's Father Phineas? Oh, that's Robert Grimston's brother. So that doesn't really make sense to me, unless this is because it is during the timeline. When they're doing their, we're going to have 5 different names. Actually, it's like 4 different names altogether, but still. Because we've seen the Process paperwork when they were shutting down their Rome chapter, and it's, here's my 3 different names, and we're going to rotate through them, and da-da-da-da. So who was trading names with Robert de Grimston's brother? Yeah, that's what I would like to know. So I asked him if Schwarzkopf or any of the cult was a German. He said Schwarzkopf's wife is apparently a German. I told him about the International Family Society for the Encouragement of Peace, run by a former German priest, Joseph Stocker, and a woman known as Maria Magdalena Kohler. This group was an anti-devil group that sacrificed animals to use the poured fresh blood for demon driving, and which had beaten a girl to death on May 15th or 16th, 1966 in Switzerland. The cult held out but finally was broken up when informants came forth to talk. MacDonald of the Toronto Sun feels that this dean at Seneca College who owns the Process house may be funneling his students into the Process. Probably is, because the college is a great way to recruit people. He further stated that this former Reverend Douglas Tisdall is a young man and that the cult at St. Matthias practiced a form of I can never say this right, dang it. Glossolalia. That's, speaking of tongues. I ain't into all that. No, ma'am. Moving on. So, Thursday, the 9th. Don't remember what the other day was. Not going back since the Wi-Fi is being janky. So, Bob MacDonald of the Toronto Sun called in the evening. He said that he had checked the massive Toronto City Directory for 1971 and found both Marjorie Rogers and Doug Tisdall were both registered as living at 99 Gloucester, the Process house. MacDonald said that Reverend Tisdall has a farm in a rural area outside of Toronto. He said that Marjorie Rogers, aka Mary Rogers, had a husband who was a professor at York College. He said that the process currently has 2 other houses in Toronto in addition to the public house at 99 Gloucester. These 2 houses are kept secret, he says. One is supposedly some sort of recreation house for use of inner processians. The other is a staff house, evidently living quarters. They are both located near 99 Gloucester. He will supply address. MacDonald writes for The Sun, covering occasionally the activities of the local mafia chieftains. He said not to worry about phone threats, that he has to change his phone number every so often, that often after he writes a story about the local mafia, his wife receives obscene phone calls from the gruff voices with Sicilian accents, meatballs, so that he calls up the local Don and requests more high-quality callers. Well, this guy seems fun, right? He seems like a fun guy. Hey, you know what? You're a G to me if you're calling up the top meatball and being like, get some better dirty jokes. Yeah, my wife's a classy lady. He is also an expert at compiling files on local cults, evidently. He has connections with the RCMP and with the Ontario Police Commission, evidently, he says, with the intelligence gathering wings of those agencies. They are working on gathering data about the process. Here's the unfortunate thing about that in regards to the RCMP is Timothy Wiley detailed how they infiltrated the RCMP, right? They infiltrated that pretty early, and they were recruiting people who were tipping them off. So that's very unfortunate. In regard to the human known as Mrs. Hindley Smith, he said that she and her associates bought up homes worth about 350 grand in the Admirable Road section of Toronto, evidently an old section with fine but aging housing. Recently, MacDonald heard from someone that Mrs. Hindley Smith's real estate holdings are in the $2 million bracket. Oh man, Mrs. Real Estate, right? It's almost like these cultists and real estate. Let's not think about Scientology. Let's start thinking about the Satanist, right? The Processians, Doug. Let's start thinking about that. Son of Sam, right? This is starting to track. We're starting to see a trend. MacDonald said that Mrs. Hindley Smith had been run out of England and thrown out of Australia, having something to do with the use of drugs, but he was vague. Hindley Smith's cult set up headquarters near St. Michael College and that many of their recruits were priests and nuns studying at the college. He said that they took over a chapel adjoining the Cathedral of St. Michael's College and began to hold weird masses there from 1968 to 1969. He said that there was evidence that this cult was into sex rituals and that they had a rural retreat where some of the nuns would retire to have their babies when they became pregnant. See, they're not able to prove things, right? This tracks. The babies were then turned over to the cult, as of Brayton's gang. He said that the followers did not even like to speculate as to the existence of Mrs. Hindley Smith. Oh, that sounds like Marianne de Grimston. MacDonald once went to the cult's house, evidently in Toronto in the Admirable Road area, where he asked for Mrs. Hindley Smith. There was some consternation, during which MacDonald got to look around the first floor of the house. He said that the decor was replete with psychedelic stuff. MacDonald is evidently not too sympathetic with regard to the so-called underground. More interestingly, however, MacDonald said that there were shiny copper plates or mirrors, perhaps on the wall of the premises. Aleister Crowley used copper mirrors in some of his rites. Some of Crowley's copper mirrors were ripped off of Morlock the Warlock, according to Morlock in a conversation with me in LA in August of 1970. Anyway, after a few minutes in the house of Hindley Smith, MacDonald claimed that some homosexual heavies arrived to effect his removal from the pad, so he retreated. After uncovering Hindley Smith's cult involving nuns and priests and sex and so forth, MacDonald prepared a story about it for the Toronto Sun. He went to the president of St. Michael's to ask him about the group operating and recruiting there. According to MacDonald, the president was very reluctant to talk, but after some questioning, admitted that he had been through hell for a couple of years worrying about this cult that was operating on his campus. He seemed very worried about possible publicity. When the Sun got ready to print MacDonald's article or articles, Hindley Smith's outfit threatened suit and even sent people in to plead with the publisher not to print it. A prominent theologian named Father Greg Baum also came around, trying to snuff the story. MacDonald expressed interest in scouting out process people active, past or present, in the Santa Cruz area. So, Larry Larson the GOAT that goat, right? He, that boy, coming in hot. And obviously, you know, there's a lot to still be found in Toronto, right? In Canada in general. There's still so much. But I did look into that Hindley Smith thing. Obviously, the stuff with Joseph Stalker, those things are true, right? So we're going to be coming back to a lot of that because what was the process doing? And were they there in 1968? Because I'm very curious about, you know, this movement and trying to exonerate, not that I think he needs exoneration, the late T-Mo, Maury Terry, right? In regards to Arliss Perry. Yeah? Because I do think that that was process related. I absolutely do. Someone left a comment recently on an old stream of mine where I had been debating, you know, if Maury, T-Mo, if he had sort of, you know, become in his own way a limited hangout. And I forgot to reply, so I'm replying to you now, and I hope that you are listening. I hadn't read his work then. And I didn't know that. I thought that I had read his work. I had actually read Josh Zeman's major limited hangout version, right? And that book, Under God's Eye, about the murder of Arliss Perry, which the timing of those two books is really interesting, right? And with the Netflix documentary. But we keep seeing Santa Cruz. We're finding out more about Canada. And so where does Stanford come into this, right? Where does Stanford come in? That's my question. Because I'm always looking to exonerate or validate the late, great Dave McGowan, the late T-Mo, Maury Terry, and Ed Sanders. Because, you know, Ed's old, man. I'm not stupid. I don't wish ill upon that man. I would love to talk to him, right? But he's got his head on a swivel, and I am certainly not trying to give him a heart attack. So let's look at one last thing from Ed, and then I'm done. Because my brain hurts. And I'm sorry that this looks the way that it does, but this is from the Times-Picayune, May 8th, 1970. Rape reported in New Orleans Museum. Rape, flogging suspects, cat o' nine tails seized. I don't know how Ed got this to be scanned backwards. I don't know. It makes it very horrific for me, but this is how it was in his file. So obviously that's really hard to read, right? So right here, though, they threatened to cut off her head with a guillotine if she did not agree to their demands. This is incredibly difficult to read, so no, we're not going to sit here and try to figure it out, right? But down here says they later confided that she was from California and had been baptized in San Francisco by a black pope in the First Church of Satan. She was a student at the University of South Florida. This is a bit easier to read. May 8th, 1970, San Francisco Chronicle, Satan cult, bizarre rape and flogging. And this was on Bourbon Street, so very close to where the process was. But Patricia Hall, who was 18, known by the witchcraft name of Inca Angelique, threatened to turn arresting officers into frogs. Do you guys remember when that old witch, Matea Heldner, was talking about putting a curse on me and something involved with a frog? Yeah? You guys remember that? Isn't that interesting? Okay, so let's see what else we have here. She said Miss Hall and the men forced her inside at the point of a knife. The victim told police she was stripped of her clothes, raped by one of the men, then flogged for 3 or 4 minutes by Mrs. Hall. Yeah, and she was raped in front of some sort of chapel, part of some Satan cult. The girl suffered lash marks on her back and legs, told police her captors let her go, but as she left the building, the men grabbed her again. Police ended up hearing her screams. So, thank goodness that they were there. But Ed coming in clutch, as Ed does, right here. Hall had tattooed a black what? I don't know what this says. Is that whip? I'll let you guys take a guess. Yeah? But apparently on the right hand, National Insider, May 7th, 1970, Rape and Mayhem in New Orleans Hall of Horrors. Witch's Coven assaults girl in front of a satanic altar. These underlines are obviously Ed's underlines, right? But that was the damage from the Cat of Nine Tails and literally called the Hall of Horrors Wax Museum. Yeah. Okay. And down here are the witches and perpetrators. Yeah. So, that's it. That's all I got. Sorry that was a little bit all over the place, but I can't say that one place is a particular hotbed or not. You know, it's New Orleans. Yeah, absolutely. But then we've got New York. That's where Vector Gallery was. J.J. Bryan, right? But then we've got California. Canada. I mean, I don't really know what to tell people. You know? There's a lot of weird stuff. But Santa Cruz, yeah, Carl Hassel, Cannibals of Santa Cruz as late as the 90s, yeah. I mean, Santa Cruz seems to be like the golden goose that people are trying to figure out. 4P, 4 pi, right? Because obviously I would like to figure that out too. But I think when you look at everything and see the things that we think that we know, we don't have a full orbed picture. Yeah. It's just, we have a long way to go, guys. I've had a really tough time trying to refocus and pick a starting point. But getting back into Ed's files and the gardener leaving a stupid comment on my Twitter, I was like, I'm so back, bitches. I am so back. So, you know, I don't want people to think that my little video series is now the focus of my channel or that I'm a commentary channel. No, but I am going to finish that. And I can do two things at once. I'm a modern woman, right? But you know, I'm motivated again. I feel inspired again. I guess by Ed's incredible paranoia. It's invigorating. Because like Ed said, the process people are everywhere, right? They really are. So we've got a long way to go, guys. I will talk to you soon and stay safe.